how far do they go before they say, you know what, there's nothing left here? I mean, if they're just sticking around because they like the six-figure paycheck and the free flights and that they get saluted by guards in Parliament, just say so. But don't pretend you're a Conservative Party. You're just a lifer, you're just a career politician. If that's what you are, just say so.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the perpetual, it's a great downfall, and one of the good things about conservatives, and I mean conservatives, not these politicians, career politicianism is a trap that these people find themselves in. And I think when Garnett answered that Paris Accord question in that fashion, he was making a career politician choice, and that's not what we need.
Can I hear Adam?
Hi, hello. This is Adam.
Hi.
Hi,
Adam. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
What a disaster. Ezra leaves us in charge, and we just burned the place down in a second.
There we go. That looks like something.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Perfect.
Back home.
You're home riding. What is that looking like?
Sorry, one more time. You're just cutting out a bit there.
Of course I am. You're back in your home riding. What's your home riding, and what's that looking like?
Yeah, it is looking like a Tom Kimmich victory pretty resolutely. I was driving straight back from the interaction with Tarek Alnaga out there with the roping he was working on. So I've just barely started to look back at the numbers, but it is looking like a Tom Kimmich is going to have a pretty solid win. I think it's in the 60-70% range. There were some candidates as well from the other parties. I'm going to have to review their numbers momentarily here, but Andrea Lee from the Maverick Party, who I had on, is doing reasonably well. Ron Vaillant from the PPC is also in the area, and then a number of folks from the other parties that we don't need to necessarily even talk about. But certainly a strong showing of candidates here. But Tom was willing to speak with us when we showed up at his office, even when Aaron O'Toole was reluctant on some of these principles. Right when it seemed Aaron O'Toole was backpedaling on defund the CBC, Tom Kimmich sent a mail out saying defund the CBC. When the Conservative Party is backpedaling on Alberta oil and gas, Tom Kimmich is wearing that I love Canadian oil and gas sweater. So he's a bit more of the old school true blue, and I think his constituents respect him. He's also had a number of bills that have garnered a lot of favor in perhaps the more sentimental crowd, particularly a bereavement leave for people who lose children under the age of 18. So basically it extends EI, and that was kind of a universally agreeable kind of sentiment drawing a legislature that has a personal tie into his story. So he's been serving the community since the ridings were redrawn, and I think he certainly has some loyalty, and I'd argue it's probably merited.
I don't believe you, because the TV keeps telling me that Conservatives are heartless. So I'm not sure if you're telling me the truth, Adam. Now, I wanted to ask you about Banff Airdrie, because that's where you were. I'm just looking at the results here. Nadine Wellwood doing reasonably well. She's at 8% of the vote. But Derek Sloan, though we attended his rallies and they looked well attended, he's only pulling 2% of that vote. And I'm curious what that's all about. Is it because, it's a Blake Richards riding? I think he'll be able to hold that seat until he retires and quits politics altogether. I wonder what that's about. I mean, you went to his events. They were pretty well attended, but I think he's drawing on people from all around as opposed to within the riding. And I wonder if some of that last minute fear mongering about a vote split hit him pretty hard in those Conservative mailouts.
Yeah, I mean, as we've said from the beginning, it is an extremely interesting constituency. Derek Sloan talks the talk, walks the walk, and he was gathering large crowds. But then you'd go out to an event with Maxime Bernier and Nadine Wellwood, they would have a large crowd as well. As we saw earlier, Tarek Alnaga of the Maverick Party, also a very charismatic candidate. So I think, and Ezra asked a question about this, about that sort of internal vote splitting within the constituency. If all of these people perhaps would have rallied behind one person in the constituency, they could have had that sort of capacity to push Blake Richards out. But there was was this division. I suspect that there is a high likelihood that lots of people were on the fence between Derek Sloan and the PPC, and I would suggest it's quite plausible that the PPC as a party had more capacity to do more. If Derek Sloan had started his party, garnered some momentum, had a number of candidates running, it wouldn't have felt like a vote I mean, we use this term wasting a vote. Not that a vote for Derek Sloan is a waste, but with the PPC, they felt like they were buying into something. Maxime Bernier was very adamant about having Nadine Wellwood very much associated with him. At the recent protest, he stood right beside her during the presentations. He was very conscious about having her, and she's a very strong speaker, a very intelligent person. So it wasn't a riding where Derek Sloan was just going to walk in and take it.
Yeah, I'm looking actually at my own riding here, and it's Garnet Genis, popular, conservative. He'll win. I mean, he'll just keep going until he retires, and then his kids will take over the riding. But he's down substantially from the last election. The last election, he finished with 73% of the vote. This time he's at 57, and the PPC party drew 7% of that away. And then then there's the standard drift to the left that things generally do here in Canada. And I wonder if that's going to play out in ridings all across the province.
I think so, because I mean, with Garnet particularly, he's generally been a reasonably principled guy, but he had a clip a while back that I think will haunt him, where he was basically doing apologetics for the Paris Accord, and you could tell he absolutely didn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. Like, he was just saying it. But I think lots of people who looked at him with this sort of hope or like, oh, not this. But I mean, I think lots of people are starting lots of people are starting to say that they're like, when are these politicians like the Poilievres and the Kimmiches and Garnet, for example, some of these voices who clearly are more true blue, gonna stop taking that back seat and say enough is enough and we're going to bat for these fundamentally conservative values?
You know what, it's a question that I have thought about for 30 years, because when I was a little bit younger than you, Adam, the Conservative Party was called the Progressive Conservative Party, and it lost touch with the people, and Preston Manning started a grassroots party, and there were good people within the PCs, and they said, don't be splittist, fix the party from within, don't start something new. We can handle this together. Brian Mulroney can build a coalition. The same arguments were used 30 years ago when Preston started the Reform Party. And some might even say they were right, because Preston Manning, although it was an excellent exercise, the point of politics is not to get exercise, it's to win. And Preston Manning did not win. He, you could say, split the right and gave Jean Chrétien 3 wins in a row. It was only when Stephen Harper reunited the right, merged the PCs and the Reform Party, or it was then called the Canadian Alliance. So I've seen this movie before. The question is, how much water do you have to put in your wine before the good guys on the inside say there's nothing left here? I mean, I said this 3 times already tonight. One guy says he's for the carbon tax, the other side says he's for a carbon levy. Sort of that's Tweedledee and Tweedledum. In the campaign, Aaron O'Toole completely abandoned his firearms policy and said, whatever the Liberals do, I'll do. Vaccines, he hasn't said a word against vaccine mandates or lockdowns. Open borders, migration, he's exactly where Trudeau is. And censorship, we've played the clip tonight of Aaron O'Toole's censorship critics saying, yeah, I'm all for it. So my point to you, Adam, is how much of this do you have to endure before the fellas you talked about, Thomas, Kimmich, if I'm saying that right, and Garnet Genuis, and all the really good guys who are only really good in secret, how far do they go before they say, you know what, there's nothing left here? I mean, if they're just sticking around because they like the 6-figure paycheck and the free flights and that they get saluted by guards in Parliament, just say so. But don't pretend you're a Conservative Party. You're just a lifer, you're just a career politician. If that's what you are, just say so.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the the perpetual, it's a great downfall, and one of the good things about conservatives, and I mean conservatives, not these politicians. Career politicianism is a trap that these people find themselves in, and I think when Garnett answered that Paris Accord question in that fashion, he was making a career politician choice, and that's not what we need. One of the perpetual issues facing conservatives is that our voting base, I would argue, is at least to some extent principled. Liberals vote in an ideological fashion. They don't care if Justin Trudeau sexually assaults people or wears blackface or loses billions of dollars or anything he does. He could kill a puppy on camera. They'd be completely happy with that because he's their guy. Conservatives, we don't buy in and make icons and idols out of our politicians. We hold them to account. But then we come into this perpetual question of pragmatic voting and principled voting, and that's a topic that has come up over and over and over again. Do we compromise our principles to get our guy in, even though he's not quite right and he's a bit of a career politician, or do we burn it all down again? And we're perpetually caught in that, where we destroy the political party, we get a political party back in that's maybe okay, they do good for a few years, they turn into career politicians again. It's a perpetual cycle for conservatives that I really don't think liberal voters have to face. So it's at once, like I said, our greatest strength and our greatest weakness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I hear in my ear that conservatives and liberals right now got exactly what they were in the last election, a pointless thing. I was just poking around while you were talking. I mean, I was listening to what you were saying about conservative voters being principled, but I just came across the riding of Stormont Dundas, which is in the Ottawa area, and I recognized that one of the candidates there for the PPC party is a Fight the Fines lawyer, David Anber, with a respectable 8%. So that's interesting to hear.
Good.
And congratulations to him for being above the national average for the PPC. Now, here in my ear, we've got some other chats. Adam, last word from you, and then we're going to. Oh, sorry, Sheila, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm watching the riding of Peace River Westlock because I do like Arnold Viersen. He's very strong on human trafficking and issues like that, and Pornhub. He's the guy leading the charge on that. And the PPC is second in that riding. Yeah. Darrell Boisson, he's the PPC candidate there, and he's at 14%. He's just slightly ahead of the New Democrat there. But I have to tell you, that looks like Arnold Viersen. And I think this is playing out all across Alberta. People are fed up with the Conservatives because he nailed his riding last time with about 81% of the vote, and he's at 62 right now. So that's a substantial drop in percentage in just 2 years. Yeah.
And I mean, to Ezra's point, just to wrap up, 100% that is the issue, is that these politicians can't simply be okay behind the scenes, or they're really good guys. It's what they do up front and what they're willing to speak about in public that shapes the identity of the party moving forward. So these people need to step out of the shadows and start being good conservative politicians in the light, not just when it suits them and they're with media that might like that angle.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Adam. Great to see you, and thanks for going out to the Cowboy Place earlier today. It was great to see. I've been poking around on some other